Marcus Webb ran a gas station outside Sacramento for 11 years. In 2022, he spent $62,000 on a DC fast charger, top of the line, ready for the EV wave everyone said was coming. 2 years later, he pulled the plug. Literally, not because EVs never showed up. In fact, EV sales in his region nearly doubled during that stretch. Not because the charger broke down. It worked fine, sitting under a shiny new canopy, blinking green, ready to serve. He lost money anyway. Not broke even and felt disappointed money. Actual, verifiable, out-of-pocket losses, month after month for 2 straight years, despite doing everything the sales rep told him to do. Here's the part that should worry you. Marcus isn't an idiot. He ran a profitable business for over a decade. He read the projections. He believed in the trend, and he still got blindsided by a cost he never saw coming, one buried so deep in his utility bill that most charging station owners don't discover it until they're already underwater. Right now, thousands of people are being pitched the exact same opportunity Marcus said yes to. Gas station owners, strip mall landlords, retail investors scrolling passive income videos at 11 p.m. Almost none of them are asking the one question that would have saved Marcus $40,000. So what actually happened to his charger? And more importantly, could it happen to you? To understand what happened to Marcus, you first need to understand the story everyone's being sold. EV sales in the US have grown at a staggering pace over the last 5 years. Millions of new electric vehicles hitting the road, with projections showing that growth accelerating for the rest of the decade. Add in billions of dollars in federal infrastructure funding, state rebate programs, and utility incentives, and you've got the perfect ingredients for a modern gold rush narrative. Scroll through enough finance content and you'll hear the pitch. Charging stations are the new laundromat business. Passive income. Recession-proof. Get in before the land grab ends. Some pitches even compare it to owning a gas station in 1950. Get positioned early, and the money just flows in for decades. It's a compelling story. It's also, for most people who act on it, dangerously incomplete. Here's the reality nobody puts in the thumbnail. Even the biggest, best-funded charging networks in the country, the ones with billions in venture capital, government contracts, and teams of engineers optimizing every variable, are still struggling to turn a profit at the individual station level. Not modest returns. Struggling. Some of the largest networks in the US have posted years of losses on their charging operations, even while growing rapidly. Sit with that for a second. If companies with 9-figure war chests, professional site selection data, and negotiated bulk electricity rates are fighting to make the unit economics work, what happens when a regular business owner with none of those advantages buys a single charger based on a sales brochure and a growth chart? That's not a rhetorical question. That's exactly the gap Marcus fell into to see how we need to stop looking at the hype and start looking at the actual invoice. Every dollar it really costs to put one of these things in the ground. Section 3. What you're actually buying. The real cost stack. When Marcus signed his $62,000 invoice, he thought that number was the whole story. It wasn't even close. Let's break down what actually goes into putting a charger in the ground, because the sticker price you see in a sales pitch is almost never the full cost. And the gap between advertised price and real price is where a lot of first-time owners get quietly ambushed. Start with the hardware itself. A level 2 charger, the kind you might install at an apartment complex or office building, typically runs somewhere between $2,000 and $10,000 per unit. Slow, steady, low drama. A DC fast charger, the kind that can charge a car in 20 to 40 minutes instead of several hours, is a completely different animal, often $40,000 to $100,000 per unit before it's even installed. That's not a typo. That's the machine alone. Then comes installation, and this is where budgets quietly explode. Trenching to run new electrical lines. Concrete work. Permitting fees that vary wildly by city and can take months to clear. And the big one, if your existing electrical panel isn't built to handle the load a fast charger demands, you may need a full utility service upgrade. That single line item alone has pushed some installations tens of thousands of dollars over budget, sometimes rivaling the cost of the charger itself. After that, ongoing costs kick in. Software and network fees to keep the charger connected to payment systems and apps, routine maintenance, and insurance. None of these show up in the glossy brochure. All of them show up on your monthly statement, so picture 2 very different entry points. One person sees a $5,000 level 2 charger and thinks that's manageable. Another sees a $70 zero fast charging setup and thinks that's a serious capital project, but the return should match. Both are right to think differently, because these are not the same investment, not even close. But here's the twist. Neither of those numbers is actually what sank Marcus. He budgeted for all of it, The hardware, the trenching, the permits. He built a spreadsheet. He thought he'd done his homework. The cost that broke him wasn't on the invoice at all. It was hiding in the fine print of his utility contract, and it's about to change how you think about electricity bills forever. Section 4. The hidden killer. Demand charges. Here's the question that would have saved Marcus $40,000. What's your utility's demand charge structure? He never asked it. Almost nobody does. And that single blind spot is the most common reason charging stations fail financially. More than bad location, more than low EV adoption, more than any of the risks people actually worry about. Most of us think about electricity the way we think about water. You use more, you pay more, in a straight line. That's how residential billing works. It's called energy charges, measured in kilowatt hours. And it's simple. Use 500 kilowatt, pay for 500 kilowatt. Commercial electricity doesn't work that way. Utilities also bill businesses for something called a demand charge, a fee based the single highest spike of power you pull at any point during the billing cycle, measured in kilowatts, not kilowatt hours. It doesn't matter if that spike lasted 5 minutes or 5 hours. It doesn't matter if it happened once. The utility looks at your peak moment and charges you for having the capacity to do that for the entire month. Now think about what a DC fast charger does by design. It sits idle for hours, then suddenly pulls enormous power, 50, 150, sometimes 350 kilowatts, the instant a car plugs in and starts fast charging. That's not a gradual draw. That's a spike on purpose, because speed is the entire selling point. Here's the math that broke Marcus. Say his charger pulled a peak of 150 kilowatts during one fast charging session. In many commercial utility territories, demand charges can run $10 to $20 per kilowatt of peak draw per month. That single session could generate a demand charge of $1,500 to $3,000, even if only 3 cars plugged in that entire month. 3 sessions. A few $100s in actual energy sold. And a demand charge alone wiping out the entire month's revenue before he paid a cent toward the equipment loan, the maintenance contract, or his own time. This is the part almost nobody sees coming until the bill lands. The charger can sit there mostly empty, doing exactly what it's supposed to do on the rare occasion someone uses it. And that single rare event is enough to make the entire month unprofitable. It's the financial equivalent of a silent alarm that only goes off after the damage is done. So if this cost is baked into the very design of fast chargers, does that mean the whole model is broken? Or are some ways of owning one smarter than others? That's where the real decision begins. Once you understand demand charges, a second question becomes obvious. Who's actually holding that risk when the bill comes due? It turns out there are 2 fundamentally different ways to get into the charging station business. And most sales pitches only ever show you one of them. Path A is the owner-operator model. This is what Marcus did. You buy the hardware, you pay for installation, you sign the utility contract in your own name, and you keep essentially all the revenue every time someone charges their car. On paper, this looks like the better deal. Full upside, no middleman taking a cut. In practice, it means you also absorb 100% of the risk. The demand charges, the maintenance calls, the software glitches, the slow months where nobody plugs in. You're not just an investor here. You're the utility customer, the maintenance department, and the landlord, all at once. Path B is the host model, and it works more like commercial real estate than a business you run. A charging network, a company that specializes in this, leases a small footprint of your property. They own the hardware. They pay for installation. They're the ones on the hook for the utility contract and every demand charge that comes with it. In exchange, you get a much smaller cut of the revenue, sometimes just a flat monthly lease payment or a modest percentage of sales. Your capital outlay is close to zero. Your risk is close to zero. Your upside is also deliberately much smaller. Picture the same corner lot, the same traffic, the same EV drivers passing by every day. Run through both models. Under Path A slow month can mean a 4-figure loss because the demand charge from one busy afternoon outweighs weeks of quiet ones. Under Path B, that same slow month means nothing changes for you. The network absorbs the hit. You still collect your lease payment because that risk was never yours to begin with. This is the contrast almost nobody frames clearly, because the party selling you Path A rarely mentions that Path B exists, and the party offering Path B isn't trying to sell you hardware. Neither path is automatically the right one. A high-traffic location with predictable heavy usage can make owner-operator genuinely lucrative. But that word, predictable, is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because whichever path you choose, everything still comes back to one number that determines whether this is a business or a hobby that costs you money. How often does this charger actually get used? Let's do the math Marcus should have done before he signed anything, because this is the number that decides everything. Start simple. Take your fixed monthly costs, the amortized cost of the hardware and installation spread over, say, 5 years, plus your average demand charges, plus maintenance and network fees. Let's say that lands around $2,000 a month, a realistic mid-range figure for a single fast charger in an owner-operator setup. Now look at your margin per session, what you actually keep after buying the electricity itself, once you've charged the customer their per kilowatt-hours or per session rate. On a typical fast charging session, that margin might be somewhere around $8 to $15, depending on your pricing and local energy costs. Let's divide the two. $2,000 in fixed costs divided by, say, $12 in margin per session means you need roughly 167 sessions a month just to break even. That's about 5 to 6 charging sessions every single day, without fail, all month long. Here's where it gets brutal. Real-world utilization data on public fast chargers, especially ones outside major metro corridors, often shows far lower numbers than that. Many stations see just 1 to 3 sessions a day in their first year or two, sometimes fewer. Sales pitches love to wave around long-term projections of 10 sessions a day by year 3. Reality, especially early on, often delivers a fraction of that. And this is the trap. The relationship between utilization and profit isn't a gentle slope. It's a cliff. A station running 3 sessions a day when it needs 6 isn't half as profitable. It's likely losing money every single month because those fixed costs, especially demand charges, don't shrink just because fewer cars showed up. The math doesn't forgive you for being close. This is why so many first-time owners overestimate their break-even point by 3 or 4 times. They picture the parking lot full of EVs they've started noticing on the road, and they assume that translates directly into charging sessions at their specific location. It doesn't. Range, home charging habits, competing stations, and simple driver awareness all stand between EVs exist nearby and EVs are plugging in at your charger. So before anyone invests $1, this is the equation that matters more than any growth chart. What's your realistic daily session count? And how far is that number from the sessions you actually need? Because there's one more variable people assume will close that gap for them: the government. At this point, you might be thinking, sure, the unit economics look rough, but doesn't the government subsidize a lot of this? That's a fair question, and it deserves an honest answer instead of a hopeful one. The federal government does offer real incentives. The 30C tax credit, for example, can cover up to 30% of the cost of qualified charging equipment and installation, up to a set cap for projects in eligible locations. On top of that, many states and utilities layer on their own rebate programs, sometimes covering a meaningful chunk of installation costs like trenching or panel upgrades. That's genuinely useful money. But look closely at what these programs actually touch. Capital expenditure, the upfront cost of buying and installing the equipment. What they don't touch, what almost none of these programs are designed to offset, is the ongoing operating cost, the demand charges, the maintenance fees, the monthly software subscriptions. The exact cost that sank Marcus? Think back to his $62,000 charger. Even a generous 30% credit might have knocked off close to $18,000 off his upfront bill. Meaningful, no doubt. But it did nothing. Zero for the $1,500 to $3,000 demand charge spikes hitting him every month afterward. A subsidy on the down payment doesn't rescue a business model that loses money on operations. This is the trap of incentive-driven thinking. Using a one-time credit to justify an investment with a broken ongoing cash flow. It's the equivalent of buying a car you can't afford to fuel, just because the dealership knocked a few thousand off the sticker price. The credit changes your entry cost. It does not change your break-even math. So if incentives can lower the barrier to entry but can't fix bad unit economics, the real question was never, can I afford to get in? It's whether the underlying business, dollar for dollar, actually works once you're standing inside it. Which brings us back to Marcus, and what he could have done differently before he ever signed that invoice. Let's go back to that gas station outside Sacramento. Marcus didn't fail because EVs weren't coming. They were, and still are, faster than almost any other shift in how we fuel our cars. He failed because he bought into the trend without pricing the risk sitting quietly inside his own utility contract. A smarter version of his decision was available the entire time. He could have chosen a location with guaranteed heavy, predictable traffic, a highway corridor, a fleet depot, somewhere sessions happen daily without hoping strangers notice the charger exists. Or he could have skipped ownership entirely and taken the host model instead. Let a network absorb the demand charges and collect a steady lease check regardless of how many cars showed up. Either path would have protected him from the exact trap he fell into. Full risk, unpredictable usage, and a cost structure he never saw coming. So if you're evaluating any charging station opportunity, a franchise pitch, a real estate add-on, A passive income side hustle someone's selling you. You now have the one question that cuts through all of it. What's your peak demand charge? And what's your realistic daily session count? Not the projected number in year 3. The realistic one starting Monday. Ask that question and you'll immediately know whether you're looking at a business or a trap wearing a business's clothes. The EV boom is real. The opportunity is real. But the version most people are being sold, buy the hardware, plug it in, watch the money roll in, is the version that bankrupts gas station owners like Marcus. The version that actually works is quieter, less glamorous, and a lot more selective about where and how it says yes. And if you want to see where that smarter money is actually going, the fleet charging model hiding in plain sight might surprise you.